So we're talking about non-Mendelian inheritance today. Pretty much, to understand that, you have to understand Mendelian inheritance. What is Mendelian inheritance? It's when things follow Mendel's law. So Mendel's law is this. Every person, for every single trait, they have two alleles. And then they combine them when they make offspring. But some of them take precedence over one another, which is why some people have blue eyes and some people have brown eyes. It's that Punnett square BS down here. Now sometimes alleles don't behave like good little boys. They behave like bad little boys. That's when they belong to non-Mendelian inheritance category. What is that? Well, here's a couple examples because this is a really bad explanation. First example is incomplete dominance. Basically what that means is that two things are fighting so hard that neither of them actually wins within the body. So one allele for this flower could be red, while the next one could be white. And instead of choosing red over white, they just kind of make pink. Our next type is codominance, which is very similar to incomplete dominance, except the only difference is that while incomplete dominance, the two kind of mix together, with codominance, each one is expressed equally. So instead of red and white making pink, we have blank polka dots and filled polka dots making blank and filled polka dots. Both alleles are equally expressing themselves. So we're going to talk about one of the more complicated ones now. It's called multiple alleles. Now, I don't understand this one all that much because it's confusing. Basically, people used to think that there was just big A, or little a, but we found out later that there are a lot of different things in between those, which makes sense because someone might have white hair, like big A, or black hair, like little a. But there's also things in between, like dark gray and light gray, with AT, and AS. So pretty much what it is that there's more than what we used to think that there were. The next type we want to talk about is pleiotropy. Basically what that is one gene controls a whole plethora of different traits. So the big A, little a gene might control your hair color, your height, your toe length, whatever. Now one good example of this would be Marfan syndrome. Basically what Marfan syndrome is, and we discussed this in class, but I'm sure none of you remember it because none of you take good notes. We're not science majors. Basically what it is someone might have a taller height, thinner fingers, thinner toes, and heart problems like a true American. So basically that all is linked back to one singular gene. And that one gene controls all of those things, rather than having individual genes controlling all those different traits. Next type we're talking about is the lethal allele type. Basically what this is, when you have a conglomeration of different alleles, many of them are needed for our survival and to make us look a certain way or do certain functions, but some of those things kind of malfunctioned along the way, which can result in the death of an individual. Basically, if you have a big A, little a, or a big A, little a, combining together and mingling, as it were, you can get all these different things, and sometimes they can just die as an embryo. This next one is polygenic trait. This is very, very similar to pleiotropy, except it's the exact opposite of it. Pretty much, this is when a trait is controlled by multiple different genes. So pleiotropy was when a gene controls multiple different traits. It's the exact opposite. This and this and this all control hair color of Johnny Bravo. It's pretty simple. So before we go into the importance of non-Mendelian inheritance, I want to reiterate a couple things that are very confusing because they're straight opposites of each other. So the first one is pleiotropy and polygenic traits. So the difference between those two, remember, is pleiotropy is one gene affecting multiple traits, while polygenic traits are one trait being affected by multiple genes. And the other one is incomplete and codominance. Incomplete is when there are two alleles fighting each other so much that they just meet in the middle, so it's like red and white makes pink. Whereas codominance would be like two different things with shaded in polka dots and non-shaded in polka dots would mix together and form a thing with both shaded and non-shaded polka dots. So now that we've talked about non-Mendelian inheritance and the different types, we kind of want to talk about why it's important. So everything that functions within Mendelian inheritance, or Mendel's law, is perfect. Everything has two alleles and they combine and they make this perfect Punnett square BS. But non-Mendelian inheritance is all the imperfections, all the things that went wrong or are just slightly different than what we used to think that they were. Pretty much non-Mendelian inheritance is necessary in understanding discrepancy and diversity within different species and organizations. It also helps us understand where diseases and abnormalities come from and how best to treat them within our society and how we can understand them just a little bit better. So in conclusion, non-Mendelian inheritance is basically all the things that are abnormal or different from Mendel's law or Mendelian inheritance. If you want to learn more, you can look up different things about dwarfism or Huntington's disease, Marfan syndrome, which we mentioned earlier. Or if you want to learn more about non-Mendelian inheritance in general, Google exists.